Okay, so for this evening, our first person is going to be Miss Faith Peters. She'll be talking about St. Petersburg College admissions. Then we'll have Case and Watson, who will be talking about USF's admissions. Then we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you have any questions about the admissions processes, feel free to ask during that time. Then we'll start to talk about financial aid with Will Scott. Then I'll be talking a little bit about scholarship opportunities and where you can find them. Then we'll have a Q&A for that as well. And then I'll wrap up the evening by providing you with some tips for juniors, as well as a little bit more about the PATH program. And so now I am going to turn it over to Faith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us. As mentioned, my name is Faith, and I am here from St. Petersburg College. And I'm just going to share my screen. Start with some slides for you. Let's see. Okay. Apologies, just getting it going here. Hopefully you can see that okay.
You can see it.
Can you see it all right? Okay. It's always tricky in Teams. Make sure you can see it. Yeah, and I'm sure that this will be a very exciting day when you do walk across the platform and graduate, and very exciting indeed. We're actually getting ready to graduate some of our college graduates as well next week, so we're pretty excited about that. And the big question is always, what's next after high school? There's so many possibilities, you know, and we'll touch on some tonight. And sometimes students don't come right away to college or university, but we'll explore them tonight, and the options will be yours, of course, but we certainly would love to see you coming the college route, and we can help you with that getting started. These three questions I like to ask I'd like to challenge you with these questions. The school you intend to attend, ask yourself these three questions, okay? And we're going to just chat about them briefly now. In relation to SPC, what we've done, we do have a lot of programs. We have almost 200 different programs. So you'll see these categories on screen, and that's the areas that you can study in. We have many different degrees and certificates within these areas. Now, when it comes to certificates, a lot of students aren't aware that they can get a full credential based on a certificate only. And that's basically if you don't want to be in school a long time, but you want to get a hands-on skill, this gives you the accreditation to do so and go to work with that skill. And what you end up doing is you don't do any of your general education courses that you would normally do for a degree. So it's an interesting area, because if you're not sure, if you're thinking about, I might like to do IT, or I might like to do something else, a certificate is an interesting way to experiment, should I say, use that word, and get a feel for if it fits you. So sometimes a student might take a short IT certificate, and they say, actually, this is what I want to do, and all the credits they earn can then go toward a degree. And then when they go into the degree path, they just now do their general education classes and a few more classes to complete their degree. So that brings us to our associate degrees. Now, you notice there's two different kinds of associate degrees listed. At college, you often will see associate in science degrees, simply because it gives you an opportunity to get into the workforce quicker. After just 2 years at a college, you can go to work in a particular field. So it does depend on the kind of career you're looking at going into. Some careers will say, yes, you have to have a bachelor's degree, and other careers will say, yes, an associate degree is acceptable, is what you're required to have to go into that pathway. Also, you'll see associate in arts degrees. Now, a lot of people don't realize the difference, and I have to be honest, honestly thought associate in arts was meant you studied arts, and associate in science, you obviously studied science, right? I know, that's what I always thought. But the difference is associate in arts is more liberal studies, so it's more broad. You're going to select some electives, some things perhaps you're interested in. And so an AA or associate in arts are the degree paths that generally will carry on to a bachelor degree. And if you finish with an AA degree and say, hey, I'm going to go to work now, it usually means you haven't specialized in anything, so it makes it a little harder to get into a particular career path. So an AA, think of it more general. AS, Associate in Science, think of it more specific. Associate in Science, again, designed to allow you to go to work after those 2 years, plus an internship is often what you'll do in Associate in Science as well. And then, so an interesting example is nursing. So nursing, you can do an Associate of Science, and you can, after 2.5 years, you can go to work with a license as a registered nurse. However, you can still get a bachelor degree in nursing as well. And if you say, I don't want to do the Associate of Science, you can do an Associate in Arts in nursing. And then you do your 2 years of nursing. But with the Associate of Arts, you cannot go to work as a nurse just yet. Then you have to take the path to get your bachelor degree. So I hope that explains it a little clearer. But of course, after your associate degree, most students, and we certainly highly encourage this, will continue to study to get a bachelor degree. Now, why do we encourage that? I can tell you, if I speak on behalf of some of my friends that never got a degree, perhaps they got a certificate, which is good, and they managed to go to work. Perhaps they started working at a place after high school and said, hey, I have a job. This is a great job. Let me keep working. And they never get around to actually getting a degree. So the difference is when you do want to switch careers or move up the ladder, so to speak, or become like maybe a manager without a bachelor degree, it becomes difficult. So when you're coming out of high school, definitely a smart idea to set your goal on a bachelor degree. Now, I just listed some of these here on your screen. There's 2 columns. If you can't distinguish, there are 2 columns there. But these are the bachelor degrees offered at SPC. So, we'll talk about university, of course, as well, because it is a choice whether you want to go to college or university. But we're going to talk about next how you can go to college and university. So that is another great option. So your option here is you can do an associate degree, go to work. You can aim then to get your bachelor degree. And sometimes you can do your bachelor degree online as well. It doesn't always need to be like in a classroom. And so you can see these and say, oh, look at that. I didn't know SPC had a bachelor degree in cybersecurity, right? But then you might say, well, actually, I would like to get my bachelor degree from university. So then you can come to us, do your AA degree, which is the first 2 years of a 4-year degree. So a bachelor's 4 years in total. The first 2 years is your AA degree. You could get it in cybersecurity. And then you could say, I'm going to go to USF and get my cybersecurity bachelor degree. So we call that a 2+2. Let's have a look here. So at SPC, we have some partnerships with local universities. And one very strong partnership is with USF. Now, a lot of students come to us specifically to do this program. Okay, so you have the option of our bachelor degrees, you have the option of the associate degrees. So the 2+2 is when you come and you purposely do your AA degree, your 2-year degree in a path that's going to now give you guaranteed admission into USF for your last 2 years to get your bachelor degree. So I'm going to show you a list of what these are, but it's very important to note there are some rules attached to the programs. So if you come to SPC, we tell you what those rules are. Certain things you have to maintain while you're at SPC to be guaranteed the admission to USF for the program, but we help you with that. So you don't need to worry about that tonight at all. All you need to do is have a look and start exploring some of the partnership degree paths between SPC and USF. So they're in alphabetical order. That might help you locate some. So a perfect example is psychology. So SPC doesn't have a bachelor degree in psychology, but what you can do is you do your AA in psychology. While you're in the program, we say you have to maintain this certain level of GPA, which is just the GPA required for the psychology program. And as you're finishing up, we make sure you're ready to now transition to USF and go straight into the psychology program to complete your bachelor's degree. Okay. Some of the cool advantages, of course, there's going to be advantages, right? Apart from saving a lot of money, because the reality is it does cost money to study. You do save a bit by studying at SPC first. And then the other cool thing is you do get an advisor at both campuses. So you can check out, find out more about USF before going over there, and your SPC advisor keeps you on track. And the coolest thing is being able to attend events at SPC and USF at the same time. But you're also going to be in a Fuse club. So other students doing the same as you are in a club together. You do activities together. You maybe go to USF events together as well. And last but not least, we have special scholarships for students who are in the Fuse program. So there's a lot of advantages to going SPC to USF through the Fuse program. All right, this is just a short snapshot of what it costs to attend SPC. So I put here an associate's degree. So that's, if you do your AA with us, you're roughly looking at under $7,000 for your 2-year AA degree. If you do an AS degree, same price. And then if you stay with us to do the other 2 years for a bachelor's, you can see that amount. So you would add the two together. So it'd be 2 years plus 2 years at SPC. So when you do look at cost-wise, yes, university does cost more, and you do get a lot of perks. It's a big campus and so on. But SPC college is known for keeping its costs low. And what we like to do is make college accessible. So here's some of the great things you can enjoy at SPC. A lot of free, see there's a lot of free words on there, but we like to have a lot of fun. There's activities on campuses all the time. We have 11 campuses, so there's lots of shifting around. We had goat yoga last week. We had a tropical afternoon, great food, everything's free, just lots of fun activities. And of course, lots of clubs you can get involved in. And when I see here, Women on the Way, Brother to Brother, we have a lot of care clubs. And what, excuse me, excuse me. What they do is sorry, let me mute my mic. Sorry about that. They actually care a lot for you. Okay, the frog is still in my throat. You know that saying, right? All right, let's move on to the next slide. Here we go. Here's a map of our campuses, and I just wanted to let you know we've got very flexible learning, so you can do stuff online as well as on campus, and we've got different start dates throughout the term as well. And I threw this picture in because I thought it's great. It's fun. We actually have 2 NASA graduates that went all the way through SPC. So there's a picture of a NASA graduate. So not graduating from NASA from us, but they came to SPC and then went on to work in NASA. So there's a lot of cool people that has attended SPC as well. All right, so let's touch on getting started at SPC. I just wanted to put these steps in front of you so you can see that it is very uncomplicated to go to college and get accepted and get into the programs at SPC. All right, I'll just show you those steps quickly. The application is a very simple online process, literally filling in the form with your information and entering 2 forms of ID to show you are a Florida resident. If you're under 24, that'll be from your parents or one of your parents or a legal guardian. And once that's that just qualifies you for the lower tuition rate. All right. So there's really not a lot more to the application process. So the big question is, will you be accepted? And this is a resounding yes. And that is the beauty of attending a college, a state college, SPC. You are always accepted. It's called open access. And so the only difference is now we need to get you into the program and classes you need, and that may take some extra steps to get there. All right. After you do apply, here is an example of the email you'll get, and you'll see your SPC ID number. I've covered it up because it's the student's information, right? But you'll get a student SPC ID, a student email address, because you'll be able to now track everything that's coming through the college for you, such as financial aid and saying, hey, there's a scholarship that's open. We want you to apply so you don't miss out. So that all comes to your SPC email address. And you also get assigned a personal advisor. So you get this cool login, you log in anytime, you can keep up with what's going on at SPC, you can get into your courses. And if you're dual enrolled, which you may be, if you're in Pinellas County and dual enrolled at SPC, please note you do not need to apply again for college because you already have an SPC ID. The minute you apply to become dual enrolled, you completed an application with us, right? So you already have that 7-digit number. So that's your number for life, but you do a short, what we call a supplemental application, and that is usually forwarded to you from our dual enrollment department, just to get more information from you and get you into college. All right. Now, transcripts, you may or may not know what they are. It's not the diploma you get when you walk across stage. It's a list of all the classes you've taken and the marks you've earned. Now, what's interesting at SPC, this is used, and get this, this is key. At SPC, we only use it as proof to show you've graduated high school. We do not look at your GPA. We do not look at the marks you've achieved. Sorry, there's some noises in my home, sorry. But what we do look at are the fact that you've graduated. That's all we need it for. And it does need to be official, because that way we know it's coming straight from the institution you're graduating from, right? And then test scores, if you are, like, not all of us test well. It can be quite nerve-wracking to do test scores. So if you've done SATs or you're planning, maybe you've done a practice SAT and you're planning to still do some next year, you've done an ACT test, you can bring those scores to us. And what we do is we put them in your student account. And that just shows us you've kind of tested and prepared yourself for a college level program. So it helps us put you in the right classes right away. If you haven't done either of those tests, you will have the option to do a free college placement test with us. And the mark is never pass or fail. Never, never, never. It's never you haven't got a high enough score. We'll never say that to you. What happens is we look at the chart and we say, oh, your score in math is this. That means you're going to go to this math class first, then you go to this math class. So we use it to gauge at what level you should start at college. Now, you see the words I put in, flex out. Our term is flex out. You might think of it opting out. So if you are not wanting to take tests, you've never taken an SAT and you're not comfortable with doing tests. If you've attended Florida high school for the past 4 years when you graduate, if you've been there for the 4 years, you can say, I don't want to do the test. That's acceptable. not a problem. It's just, you know, in other circumstances, you may be required to do it. So the admissions, though, is not based on your scores. Just keep that in mind. It's just for placing you in the right class, right? Right, so now you've done the application, you've sent in your official high school transcript, and obviously after you've graduated high school, and you've sent in your test scores, or you've opted out of testing. The last thing you're going to do is meet with an advisor at SPC. And what's great is, remember I showed you on the email you get assigned a personal advisor. That's someone you can connect with, you can reach out with, you can ask questions to, and they can be your go-to person. But then again, we've got a lot of advisors on campus. So maybe you come in, the advisor's not in today. You can see any advisor. They can help you. So the kind of things they help you with are those things I've written here on the slide. They create your learning plan and help keep you on track throughout your journey at SPC. And one more thing I want to throw in is while you're at high school, you could ask if there are any classes you can take in high school that will give you college credit. And that doesn't just include dual enrollment. There's dual enrollment. There's AP classes, but this is something extra. A perfect example is if your class has a digital media program, maybe digital media, you've taken 3 years of digital media at high school, those credits can come in and count toward a digital media degree. Yeah, and I'm just putting this up because you're going to hear more about that in a moment, about financial aid. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm happy to answer any questions in the chat this evening. So if you do have some questions for me, pop them in the chat right now. I'll keep an eye out. And otherwise, I'll hand it back over to Danica for your next presentation.
Thank you so much, Faith. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kason Watson, who's going to talk to us about USF admissions.
I'm muted. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Right, awesome. Thank you. So as Nick said, my name is Kason Watson. I'm one of the admissions counselors at the University of South Florida. I'm actually located at the St. Petersburg campus, but I cover the entire USF system. So my territory is actually South Pinellas County, and I'm currently covering parts of Hillsborough as well. So if you submit an email or something to admissions@usf.edu and you are in the Pinellas County area, it's going to be coming to me. Just so you know, if you're submitting admissions at USF, it's coming to me. So it's always interesting when I get emails from students that are talking to me. They don't know they're talking to me. It's always amusing me. But anyways, I'm going to go over the USF system, the requirements, and you know, what you need to do and what you need to be preparing for to be admitted to the University of South Florida. So a little bit of background about the University of South Florida. We were founded in 1956. Our mascot is the Bulls, if you're not aware. We overall enroll about 50,000 students. I think it's actually closer to 60 currently, but I like to point that out to students because our standard processing time for documents, when you send us your transcripts and documents, is about 4 to 6 weeks. So I like to point out what our standard enrollment is because students are constantly sending us documents. It's a little bit different because you at SPC, for example, if you start out at SPC or if you're going to SPC or HCC or one of the state colleges or community colleges, they process documents like more quickly than we do. Our processing is centralized and it takes a little bit of time. That's why deadlines are very, very important when you're looking at the university system. So if you're applying to USF, you are applying to the USF system. It's one application, and then you are applying to the U system. If you're admitted to the system. You can select what campus you want to attend. The only restriction I would say would be, and I don't really like to call it a restriction, but it's major. So if you're interested in, for example, graphic design, that major is only available on the St. Petersburg campus. If you're interested in engineering, for example, that's only available on the Tampa campus. Hospitality is going to be on the Sarasota Manatee campus. So that's kind of a consideration when you're thinking about what you're interested in as far as majors go. But You can attend classes at whatever campus you want to. You do have to select a home campus, but you can attend classes at whatever campus are available. And if you're interested in something like, for example, business, we have business on all 3 of our campuses. So that is something to consider. But when you're applying to USF, the requirements are the same for all 3 campuses, and you're submitting an application for the USF system. So the one thing I like about the USF system is that it's you get the option to experience a couple different kinds of campus experience. So you're looking at Tampa, if you're looking towards more of our traditional kind of campus feel, our more traditional university feel. If you're looking for a smaller, more community-based campus, St. Pete or Sarasota might be a better fit for you. If you're looking for all the traditional experiences and things like that. You can also go to St. Peter or Sarasota, but keep in mind like the football team and things like that are going to be housed on the Tampa campus. You can still attend, but it's not as readily available for you. But it just really depends on what you're looking for. I'm a St. Pete grad, and I really had a great experience at USF St. Pete, mainly because I had easy access to my professors. All my class sizes were small. I would see professors walking around on campus. If I needed help with something, it was very easy to get help. So everyone kind of knew each other. It's kind of hard to get lost in the crowd in St. Pete or the Sarasota campus. So that's something to consider. I would suggest visiting all 3 campuses just so you get an idea about, what they're all about. I think that one of the biggest factors about whether or not you're going to be successful at a college or institution is whether or not you feel like you belong at that college or institution. And I know it's hard to, it's odd to say, but that really is one of the deciding factors about whether or not you're going to actually complete the degree at that institution, is whether or not you feel like you actually belong there. Most students are going to change their major. I think 80% of college students change their major at least once. So there are a lot of different factors that I think you should consider, and college visits are going to be really important for kind of figuring out what's going to be a better fit for you as a student. So if we're looking at apologize, I'm skipping around a little bit. So if we're looking at the different campuses, once again, Tampa is our largest campus by not only size, but by majors as well as student population. I believe they have about 40,000 students on the Tampa campus. USF St. Pete is going to be kind of in the middle with about 4,400 students, whereas Sarasota Manatee has about 2,000 students. So if you're looking at the size and scope, you'll notice that there are significant differences in the campuses. But like I said before, USF Tampa is more of our traditional institution. If you're looking at the UFs and FSUs, they're kind of going to be similar to what you'll find at the Tampa campus. Everything that you're going to need is basically going to be on campus for you. It's like I like to refer to it as a little mini city, because everything that you need is going to be available to you, whereas USF St. Pete and Sarasota are more integrated into their respective cities. So St. Pete is in the heart of downtown St. Pete. If you are looking to have access to the downtown area with all its growth and restaurants and museums and things like that, it's all available to you. We are walking distance from Rays soccer or Rays baseball, Rowdy soccer, Saturday morning market, the St. Pete Pier, all within walking distance of the St. Pete campus. So if you're looking for that kind of experience, and then St. Pete might be a better fit for you. Sarasota Manatee is actually our smallest campus. They're essentially at this moment a 1-building campus. They are very specialized. If you're looking for, they have a food lab where students can go and experiment with different kinds of food. The food residence hall, not residence hall, I apologize. The dining area is actually run by students. So if you're interested in hospitality, there's no better opportunity to get to see how like an actual facility or restaurant actually runs, because the students actually control the budget and they run that institution, that area. So if you're looking to figure out, hospitality, I don't think there's any better campus than the Sarasota Manatee campus, just by their relationship with the restaurants and organizations in the Sarasota area, but also the fact that they have very hands-on programs, and you can actually get the experience of running your own kind of facility. So one of the things that happened recently is that we went through a process called reconsolidation, which meant that we went from being 3 separately accredited institutions to being one institution under one accreditation. And that means that we also became a preeminent research university. I always get the question, what does preeminence mean? We are one of 3 preeminent institutions in the state of Florida. There's UF, FSU, and now USF as the 3 preeminent universities in the state of Florida. There's a lot of different factors that we have to meet to be preeminent. For example, our freshman retention rate, our graduation rate, our 4-year graduation rate, and our 6-year graduation rate, some of the partnerships that we have, as well as baccalaureate degrees, things like that. And there are certain metrics we have to meet to be a preeminent institution, but that also means that we have access to a lot more funding for things like research. If you're interested in like what I like to call a hard science, like biology or marine science, there's a lot more research funding for preeminent institutions, a lot more access to be able to do some sort of interesting work within the institution that is preeminent. So the section I'm going to spend the most amount of time on really is going to be the freshman admission requirements, because that's kind of where the most important information is. I'm going to go through the application steps and what you need to do to be admitted to USF. So obviously we have the application. We are a merit-based evaluation system, meaning that we only look at a couple things when you apply to USF. We look at the application, the SAT or ACT scores, and then the high school transcript. So you have the Common App, the Coalition app, or the USF application on the website. You can use any one of those. If you are interested in applying to multiple institutions, I would suggest maybe the Common App or the Coalition app, because you can apply to multiple schools at the same time. Please keep in mind that different schools do have different requirements even on the Common App. So we've had students that have applied. So for example, FSU might use the self-report, the SSAR. USF currently does not. So you would want to consider, what you need to do when you're looking, even when you're looking at an application that does multiple schools, that you still need to look at the requirements that each institution has. So USF is merit-based. We don't have essays, academic resumes, letters of recommendation. We have the application, test scores, and transcripts. Those are the only items that we look at. We do recalculate the GPA for students. I'm going to go over that a little bit more in a minute. We also do super score. So if you take the SAT or ACT multiple times, we'll give you the highest score in each section. I do encourage students that if you are interested in USF and any institution that requires a test score, take both tests, take the SAT and the ACT if you can. I know that's not always an option for students, but some students just happen to do better on one versus the other, and it's best to take both if you have the opportunity to. So as I said before, deadlines are very, very important. Our application actually opens in July. The priority deadline for completion is December 1st. And that just means that if you submit the application before this deadline, you have the best opportunity to be admitted to your chosen campus and chosen program. So keep that in mind. We do have students that have applied quite a bit after the deadline, and in some cases, Tampa was full, so we redirected them to other campuses. So keep that in mind. If you're interested in a specific program or specific campus, you're going to want to make sure you put your application in as early as possible. You can always update that information as you get closer to the deadline. You can always submit updated test scores, updated transcripts, but you're going to want to make sure that your application is in so we can start that review process. So the priority financial aid deadline is January 1st. The January 15th is the deadline for our admission scholarships. So if you want to be in consideration for the admission scholarships, you're going to want to make sure that you submit a transcript, and the application, transcripts, and test scores have to be qualifying and submitted before the deadline in order for you to be awarded a admission scholarship. The admission scholarships, which I'll talk about a little bit later, I do have the set requirements, and I'll go over that when we get to that section, but you're going to want to make sure you submit the application before that deadline in order to be considered for the scholarships. Then we also have the final application deadline, which is April 1st, and then our admissions deposit deadline, which is May 1st. So as I said before, with the way that we evaluate the transcript, we do a recalculation. Students will ask me whether or not it's a weighted or unweighted GPA. It's a recalculated GPA, meaning that we look at the core academic courses. So for students in the state of Florida, there are 18 units that you have to meet to graduate from a Florida school. And we look at the 18 units, so the core academic courses that a student is submitting on their transcript. And then if they're taking honors classes, we'll weight it an extra half point. AP, IB, dual enrollment, and ACE Cambridge is an extra full point of weight. So we do weight the GPA based on the honors classes, AP, things like that. And we also look at the core academic courses. So for example, if you're taking a weight training class, that's fantastic. You're probably in way better shape than I am, but we don't use that in the calculation of the GPA because we're looking at the academic courses. If you're looking at the test scores, we super score, as I said before, the SAT or the ACT. We don't have a preference on whatever, you want to, I would suggest submitting both scores if you have taken both. And then we also look at, grade trends. We also look at rigor, like for example, if you're taking honors or AP classes, not only is that a benefit for the weighting of the GPA, but we also look at that in consideration with the students that are taking courses. Dual enrollment is also, if you are taking dual enrollment classes, keep in mind that I would suggest taking dual enrollment classes for courses that you're going to do well in, because the post-secondary GPA is something that we do look at. So if you're taking a dual enrollment class and you happen to not do well in that dual enrollment class, that could affect your admission to USF. So keep in mind, if you're really good at math, stick to the math courses for dual enrollment or AP, things like that, because it could affect the possible admission for USF. So the average freshman profile for fall 2021 was a 4.4 to a 4.0 to a 4.4. That's the recalculated GPA, and a 1230 to a 1370. For the SAT, a 26 to a 31 for the ACT, and that's the middle 50% of students that were admitted to USF. So we admit about 1/4 of our students above that and 1/4 of our students below. And we review students for every possible admissible term. So if a student applies for the fall, which is the most competitive term, the most applications come in for the fall, we're going to review the student. If they're not meeting fall requirements, we're going to review them automatically for the summer. If they're not meeting summer, we're automatically going to review them for the spring. So we review students for every term. Students apply for fall, and sometimes they get admitted to summer or spring. If they're not meeting the fall requirements, we're going to go ahead and review them for the other terms, and they might be admitted for one of those terms. Keep in mind, the application is based on competitive enrollment as well. So the closer and closer it gets to the start of the term, the more competitive it gets. So a student that submits an application before that first, December deadline has a better chance than to be admitted than a student that is submitting an application, for example, in March. So keep that in mind. Same GPA, same test scores, you have a better chance to be admitted if you submit the application in December than if you submit it in March. My advice is apply early. Check your Oasis account. Once you submit an application to us, very similar to SBC, once you submit an application, you should get an email from us within 24 to 48 hours to set up your account. You get a university ID number, and that is basically your account number for USF, and you will be setting up your net ID, which is basically your login for USF, and then you can always go in and check the status of your application from that point on. So you submit the application, 24 to 48 hours later, you get an email from us setting up your net ID. You can log into your student portal and check the status. You'll see whether or not we made a decision. You'll see whether or not we have received documents. You'll see your residency status. Everything is going to be in that account. And please, for the love of God, check your email. All the information we're going to send you, for the most part, financial aid information, the admissions office, all of those are going to come to your student email. Another piece of advice I would give to students is make sure that you set up either a separate email if you already have one, or forward your emails to the email that you check the most, so that you can see the information that's coming to you from the institution. Because quite often we get students that are missing deadlines or missing documents, or miss being admitted because they forgot to submit something, and we were sending them emails and they didn't receive the email. So it's really important for you to check that email. And also, it's really important that when you're looking at colleges and universities, basic general research, like if you are looking at USF, you go to Google admissions at usf.edu, or admissions requirements for USF, and the first page will come up with our admissions page, and all the information I just told you, deadlines, requirements, how we review the application, is all on our admissions page. So if you're interested in any institution, Yale, Harvard, whatever it is, your first step should be looking at the admissions page of that institution, because we're going to tell you what we're looking for. We're going to tell you whether or not we require essays. We're going to tell you whether or not what our requirements are. And you should have a good idea of whether or not you're meeting the requirements for an institution well before you ever apply to that institution. Like I can't say for some of the private institutions, but I will say all the public institutions publish their averages. They publish their requirements. They publish their, average GPAs and things like that. So you should have a good idea about whether or not you're meeting the requirement for an institution before you ever apply to that institution. So as I said before, with our admission scholarships, if you're applying before the January 15th deadline and you're meeting the GPA and the test score, so at either the SAT or the ACT, you don't have to do both, one of these test scores and the qualifying GPA, you'll automatically be offered one of these scholarships. If so as long as you've met the requirement and you've submitted documents, completed the application before the deadline, you will be offered an admission scholarship with your admission letter. So these are not scholarships you have to apply for separately. These are scholarships that are based directly on your admission documents, your transcripts, and your test scores and your application. And we have other scholarships that you would have to apply for separately on our financial aid website. I also want to make sure that you look at the individual institutions' financial aid website, because they're going to have a lot of information about scholarships and things like that as well. So keep in mind that, the information is is out there for you. If you have any questions about how to find it, you can always reach out to the admissions office at whatever school you're applying to. So we also have some other scholarships, National Merit, there's a National Merit semifinalist, Hispanic Scholars, USF Honors College. All of those scholarships are stackable scholarships that Bright Futures, all of those scholarships are stackable. So if you are interested in any of those institutions and you are looking for scholarship information, your junior year is the best time to start looking for those and submitting your essays and kind of gathering that information together, so that when it comes time to pick your institution, you'll have some of that stuff already tied up. The Honors College is a little bit different than it has been in the past for USF. We used to do a automatic admission to the Honors College. Now it is based on the application, or based on an application. So you would have to submit an application, an essay to the Honors College if you are interested in the Honors College at USF. We have a couple different programs that you'd have to be in the Honors College to be able to participate in. The 7-year accelerated BS to MD and BS to PharmD program. Both you'd have to be in the Honors College to be part of those programs, as well as our 3+3 partnership with Stetson, if you're interested in law. So this is our tuition and fees. For in-state and out-of-state, you're going to want to make sure that when you submit the application that your in-state information is correct. If you are indeed a Florida resident, make sure that you check that. That is the only part you're at the application your parents should be directly involved with. The student needs to be filling out this application. And a lot of the conversations that I have with students and parents, as soon as a student submits an application, any institution that receives federal funds is under a provision or law called FERPA. So as a institution, I cannot disclose the student's admissions decision or admissions information to anyone but the student, unless I have express permission or written permission. There's a form that can be filled out to give that information to anyone but the student. So keep that in mind. I get a lot of calls from parents that are asking whether or not their student is admitted or anything like that. I cannot disclose that information to anyone but the student. If the student is present and have given me permission, I can disclose that information. If not, I cannot disclose that information if the student is not present and has not given me permission. And that is federal law for any institution that is receiving federal funding. So if you're interested in USF, we have residence halls and dining at both the St. Pete campus and the Tampa campus. We are currently working on residence halls for the Sarasota Manatee campus, but that is not completed at the moment. But we do have options for housing at both St. Pete and Tampa. So these are the options for Tampa. And we have quite a few options at Tampa. And then these are the options at St. Pete. If you have any questions about housing, please reach out to us and we can kind of go over what the requirements are and the housing application and what the amenities are. So USF is a Division I sports institution. So we have basketball, football, tennis, all those sports if you're interested. We have a ton of different clubs and organizations. If you're interested in a club organization, I can almost guarantee we have something that's related to that. If not, you can always form your own club or organization. If you get together with a group of your friends at Tampa, it is, I believe, 10 students to form your own club or organization. At St. Petersburg and Sarasota, it's 5 students or more can form your own club or organization. We have all kinds of different clubs. We have the Chocolate Lovers Club and Oreo Club, all those different kind of organizations. They are able to be funded by student government funds if you are interested in requesting that. So it's a lot of different awesome organizations depending on whatever campus you want to attend. But there's a lot of different options for whatever students are interested in getting into. So if you are interested in USF, I encourage students to take a campus tour. All of our campuses, please keep in mind that we have had a tremendous increase in volume for applications at USF. So if you're interested in taking a campus visit, all the state institutions, state universities have mixed streams. Somewhere we're at like 32% increase in applications to USF. So if you're looking to do a campus tour, please be patient with us. As soon as we put up the campus tour, schedule, they are filled up. So if you are interested, you're going to want to make sure that you get to the process as early as possible, because it is becoming very difficult to get into a campus tour in a timely manner. So we do release campus tours, I think, once a month. Whenever we update the campus tours, you're going to want to make sure you check the website and register for a campus tour as early as possible. And if you are interested in coming by and seeing the USF campus and just visiting, all of our admissions offices have an open door policy. So if you just want to come by and ask questions about the admissions process, or anything related to our programs or scholarships or anything like that, feel free to stop by and see us. You can always come by and see an admissions counselor. Our office hours are from 9 to 4, and you can always come by and talk to us if you have any questions. And the campus tour always ends at one of our admissions offices, so you can come by and talk to the admissions counselors if you do have any questions. And if you also want to reach out to us, you can always do it via email, admissions@usf.edu. For me directly, I will leave my direct contact information in the chat if you do have any questions. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Kaysen. We really appreciate it. So we do have a few moments if anyone has any questions for Kaysen or for Faith about admission. So you can either put your question in the chat and we can answer it, or you can turn on your microphone and we can hear you ask your question out loud. We might not have any more questions at the moment, but that is okay. Like Kaysen said, he will share his information in the chat. So if you want to ask him anything personally, don't hesitate to contact him. Kaysen is a great resource if you have questions about USF. And so now I'm going to turn it over to financial aid. So we'll be hearing from Mr. Will Scott, who is a part of the SPC Financial Aid team. You are on mute.
Excellent. Thanks very much. That's everybody's specialty, right? Let me try to share my screen so I can get this PowerPoint up. All right, hopefully you guys can see this now. So yes, my name is Will Scott. I work in the financial aid department at St. Pete College. I actually split my time between the Tarpon Springs campus and the Clearwater campus. So if you ever want to come and see me, that's where you'll find me. But this evening, I definitely want to talk to you about a lot of different financial aid things. Obviously, this is the fun part of the evening. You got all the exciting part done so far, but now we get to the really fun part, which is how am I going to afford to pay for college? So a couple of different things I want to talk about. First thing is the actual financial aid application process. Then I'm going to talk about the verification process. And then I'm going to talk about the different types. There are basically 4 types of financial aid. That is grants, scholarships, the Federal Work-Study Program, and federal student loans. So first things first is actually applying for financial aid. Now, the main form that you have to complete in order to determine your eligibility for financial aid is the FAFSA form. There are several different sites you can go to complete this application, but there's only one site that you should go to, and that's the one they have on this slide, fafsa.gov. It's a government website. It's completely free to fill out this application, as it should be, as in the title of the application is called the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. However, there are some unsavory organizations that have created websites that charge you almost $100 to fill out this application. So please, please, please do not fall into that trap of going to any other website other than fafsa.gov. That is the federal, that's the government website. It's the free place. Excuse me. I think Faith has passed a cough across the phone line. It's the only place you're going to want to fill out this application. Now, the great thing about the FAFSA, especially if you come into SPC, it's really the only application that you need to complete to determine your eligibility for federal, state, and institutional funding. I believe USF, it's the same. They don't make you do all sorts of additional applications. So it's a very simple process to determine your eligibility for all of the federal, state, and institutional aid. And what I'm talking about there are all the different grants that are available and the federal student loans that are available. I will talk about scholarships separately. The first step you do when you go to apply for the FAFSA is you have to create a username and password. That username and password is called an FSA ID. As most of you on the line, because I believe most of you are juniors in high school, so most of you on the line are going to be considered dependent students when you fill out the FAFSA. Basically, the differentiation between a dependent and an independent student is there are 13 questions on the FAFSA that determine whether you are considered dependent. If you're considered dependent, you have to include parental information. If you're considered independent, then you don't. But those 13 questions basically are you 24 years old? Do you have kids? Are you married? Do you financially take care of someone other than yourself? And most institutions to check that would look to see who you claimed on your taxes. Are you an emancipated minor? Are both of your parents deceased? Were you removed from your parents by the courts for some reason? Are you homeless? Are you a veteran of the armed forces? Are you currently active in the armed forces? Or are you working on a master's degree? Those are the different things that it's going to ask you on the FAFSA to determine whether you're dependent or independent. So as I say, most people on this call at least are going to be considered dependent, and therefore not only will you as the student have to create a username and password, but also your parents are going to have to create a username and password. You only have to do one FAFSA form, but you both will need the username and password. So you as the student require that username and password to log into your FAFSA, and then your parents will need that username and password so that they can link to the IRS that I'll talk about a little bit later, and B, so they can sign on your application. Now, some parents won't be able to create an FSA ID because if your parents do not have a social security number, they won't be able to create an FSA ID, but that doesn't preclude you as the student from completing a FAFSA. As long as you, the student, have a social security number, you can complete the FAFSA. And then all you'll do is when you come to the last page of signing the FAFSA, you just have to have your parents sign it, wet signature, and then mail it in to an address in Kentucky. So it's not impossible, it just takes a little bit longer. Now, the next big thing is which FAFSA do you need to complete? So as juniors in high school, I suspect that most of you are not going to be starting college until fall of 2023. If that is the case, then the FAFSA you're going to need to complete will be the 23-24 FAFSA, which will be available later this year. The 23-24 FAFSA actually will be available as of October the 1st of this year. I know that seems a long time before you start in college, but there are advantages to filling it out as early as humanly possible. Those advantages primarily are to do with the amount of grant you may be eligible for. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the grant slide. Now, for those of you that are deciding that when you graduate from high school next May time, maybe you don't want to wait until the fall to start college. Maybe you want to jump immediately into college in the summer. If you choose to do that, that's great. But then you would also need to do, in addition to the 23-24 FAFSA, you would also want to do the 22-23 FAFSA. And that FAFSA is already available. It's been available since October of last year. So if you are considering starting summer next year, I'm not talking about summer that starts in a month's time or a couple of weeks' time, I'm talking about summer a year from now, then you would want to do the 22-23 FAFSA and the 23-24 FAFSA. Now, when you do the 22-23 FAFSA, that's going to be based on you and your parents' income information from 2020. When you finally can get around to do that 23-24 FAFSA, which, as I say, isn't available until October the 1st, that's going to be based on you and your parents' 2021 taxes. I know I've just thrown a lot of different numbers at you. That's why I tried to make it as clear as possible on this slide. But I also will put my contact information in there in case any of this is confusing. You can always reach out to me. One other thing that you may want to reach out to me about as well that you won't want to bring up on this call is I mentioned the fact that in order to be considered an independent student, you have to be able to answer yes to one of those 13 questions. You know, are you 24? Are you married? Do you have children? Those types of questions. Now, occasionally we have students that although they're not able to answer yes to any of those questions, which would automatically make them independent and therefore not need to include parental information, sometimes there are unique circumstances. Maybe it's a situation of parent abusive situation or abandonment by parents, and therefore it's just impossible, or we don't want to be putting you in that dangerous predicament of having to reach out to parents. Then what you'd want to do is reach out to the school you're attending or planning on attending, the college, and then the financial aid department will be able to discuss with you what kind of documentation can you provide to prove the situation, the unique situation that you're in. So that is definitely something that is a possibility for students. The last thing I want to mention about the FAFSA is the trickiest part of completing the FAFSA is trying to figure out what income information goes in which box. So FAFSA and the IRS have banded together to try to make this a little bit simpler. So now when you do get to that income side of things, what you're able to do is you can link to the IRS website. It's called an Irs Retrieval Tool. And if you utilize that tool, it's going to plug all of your tax numbers, at least most of your tax numbers, in the right places. Not only does it make completing the FAFSA easier, but also if you get chosen for a process called verification, it's going to simplify the verification process. Before I move on from this slide, does anybody have any questions? I don't know whether you want to ask questions as we go along, because otherwise you may forget rather than waiting till the end.
There is a question in the chat. So the question asks, when it comes to completing the FAFSA form, if parents are divorced, which parents' taxes are used? For example, my ex and I alternate years to claim our son. So would it be the parent that claimed him?
Great question. I was actually going to come to that on this slide at the very last point, but I'll cover it right now, so it's a good question. So basically, which parent did you live with is the one you're typically going to be using on the FAFSA. So that's the easiest way. The one you've lived with most recently. That's the parent you're going to use on the FAFSA. And to go into a little bit more detail on that, as divorced parents, if the parent the student is living with, so if Billy is living with mum, if mum has remarried, then you're also going to have to include stepdad's information on there as well. And that's one of the tricky ones when it comes to the parents' marital status. Billy thinks, okay, well, my parents are divorced, and Billy puts parents divorced and then just puts whichever parent he lives with on the FAFSA. But Billy's parents, his biological parents may be divorced, but now mum has remarried. So actually his parents' marital status is married if the parent he's living with is currently married. And then that does require including the additional parent, the step parent at that point. Hopefully that answers your question and elaborates a little bit more on another scenario. Any other questions? If not, I will move along. So when you are completing the FAFSA, the first thing, and I kind of alluded to this already, that you're going to definitely need, as a student, you're going to need a social security number. I did mention the fact that parents don't need social security numbers, but the student absolutely does. And then the student status, there's basically a few different statuses that a student needs to be eligible for financial aid. So either a US citizen or a naturalized citizen, as in somebody who wasn't born here but moved here and became a citizen later in life. Or there are a few categories of eligible non-citizens. Those eligible non-citizen categories, primarily it's a green card holder. If not a green card, then certainly people that have been approved for asylum or approved for parolee, approved VAWA. VAWA is Violence Against Women Act from different countries, and it's not safe for those people to be in other countries. Those are the main categories. There are a few other very small categories. Certainly we're receiving a lot of Afghanistan refugees recently. So there's a few other categories, but the primary ones definitely are US citizens, green cards, or refugees. And then you should have an alien number with all of those categories I mentioned, other than US citizen. You don't need an alien number for that one. But it's only the student that needs that status. It's not the parents. Now, if a student has parents that are either not in the country or they're in the country but maybe not legally in the country, that's okay. The student can still complete the FAFSA, and when they put their parents' information on there, the social number they'll put for the parent is going to be 9 zeros. That's not a problem. You can still complete the FAFSA. The main income information that you're going to be utilizing is going to be tax returns. So if a student worked and filed taxes, it's going to be their income, their tax return information. The same with parents. If students or parents don't file taxes but worked, for instance, if they make under the threshold, then they just list how much they made from working. So therefore, if they don't have tax returns, probably going to be looking at W-2s to help fill out the FAFSA. There is some untaxed income that has to go on the FAFSA as well. Interestingly enough, If you are receiving Social Security disability, SSDI, the untaxed portion of that does not need to be included on the FAFSA. If you have a portion that's taxed, that will be included. But the untaxed portion of SSDI does not get included. However, if you are a veteran and you're getting veterans disability, that does need to be included on the FAFSA. So there's a few different little weird complexities to the FAFSA when it comes to untaxed income. So again, if you are trying to fill out the FAFSA, if you do need help, you're more than welcome at any time to come to one of our campuses. We're more than willing to help you in our financial aid department. And I know USF has the same policy. If you need help during the FAFSA, please come to our campuses. We can help. We do a lot of events throughout the year as well, virtually, if you're looking for help completing the FAFSA. But honestly, the easiest way, come and visit us at a campus, and we can give you that one-on-one attention to help you complete the FAFSA. Next numbers piece of the FAFSA that can get confusing, and the most commonly mistaken part of the FAFSA are there are 3 asset questions. Those 3 asset questions ask, 1, how much cash do you have? And that's basically what is the balance of your checking and savings account. That one is usually pretty simple. Second one is investments. Now, investments is the one that is most commonly people make mistakes on, because investments, you don't have to include retirement instruments. So if you have a 401k or a 403b or a Roth or a traditional IRA, the amount of money you have in those instruments does not need to be included anywhere on the FAFSA. So sometimes we'll see people putting very large numbers on the FAFSA in that investment box because they're mistakenly including their retirement accounts. You do not need to include your retirement accounts under investments. If you have a brokerage account that is not a retirement instrument, then the net worth of that does need to be included. And in this new world we live in, if you have a crypto account, the net worth of your crypto account does now need to be included under investments. Also, a common mistake is the net worth of your primary residence. If you own a house and you're trying to figure out the net worth, obviously net worth is what it's worth minus what you owe on it. But your primary residence, you do not need to include. You do not need to calculate that. Investments would only be if you have rental properties or if you have vacation properties, but you do not need to include the house you live in anywhere on the FAFSA. Just like you don't need to figure out the value of your car. You don't need to figure out the value of your PlayStation. Those types of assets you're not including. It's primarily under investments. It's going to be if you have a brokerage account, if you have a trust, if you have rental properties or vacation properties. That's what's going to be included in that bucket. And then the last question is asking the net worth of a business or farm. You only need to calculate the net worth of a business or farm if you employ more than 100 people. So for most businesses that people may have, they maybe don't employ 100 people, maybe you have some small business, you're not going to need to be trying to figure out the net worth. And therefore, the most common thing that we see on the FAFSA once we've corrected it is some sort of dollar amount for money in checking and savings account for the first question. Investments, more often than not, is about 0. Businesses, more often than not, about 0. Any questions on that stuff? Just some of the common number problems I see or mistakes people make on the FAFSA. I think I've already discussed the last point on here about who to include by way of parents, but the only piece of the puzzle I probably didn't include was if you are adopted, then it's the adoptive parents you're using. No, it's biological, step, or adoptive, whoever is the one who is in your life at this point. The only exception to that, in your life at this point, it does occasionally occur where your biological parents put you up for adoption, and then later in life, your adoptive parents are no longer in your life, but now you've reformed a relationship with your biological parents. If your biological parents never took legal custody back of you, as in went through the courts to get legal custody back of you, then your adoptive parents are still your parents of record for the purpose of the FAFSA. And that has come up a couple of times. I will move on to the next slide. So once you do submit the FAFSA, one of the things you're going to do when you complete the FAFSA, actually, that I didn't mention, is you're going to be including schools on there. So you can add up to 10 schools when you're completing the FAFSA. So what will then happen is once you submit that FAFSA, the FAFSA will be sent off to all the schools that you listed. Typically, the schools receive it 3 days later after it goes through the federal processor. So once the school receives it, then the school is going to have discovered whether you have been chosen for a process called verification. And when I say the school is going to discover this, basically when it goes that 3-day process that it goes through the federal processor, that's the Department of Education, they're going to select about 1/3 of all FAFSA applications for a process called verification. The first thing I want you to hear me say is the federal processor is selecting you for verification. The school is not selecting you. Do not think that SPC or USF or the University of Florida is picking on you. We are not the ones that select you for verification. Second thing I want you to be aware is don't freak out. It is not an IRS audit if you get chosen for verification. It's a complete random sample. Department of Education selects about 1/3 of all FAFSA applications, and they just want us then to check and confirm that the information you put on the FAFSA was correct. So we're going to list some items on your to-do list that we want you to bring in for us, possibly tax returns, possibly different verification worksheets. You just fill out the forms, bring in the documents we asked for. If you made a mistake on the FAFSA, no big deal. Many people make mistakes filling out the FAFSA. All we're going to do is we're going to correct those mistakes. We're going to resubmit it to the Department of Education, and then we're going to get a new report back from them, and then we can determine your eligibility based on once we clear verification. As I said, it's no big deal. One of the big advantages, as I mentioned, when you're filling out the FAFSA, if you use that Irs Retrieval Tool, it's going to limit the amount of documentation we need to get from you if you get chosen for this process called verification, because then we know the tax numbers are right, because it came straight from the IRS. As long as you didn't change the numbers after it transferred across from the IRS, then we don't have to do anything with your taxes. It makes life a lot easier for you, and definitely a lot easier for us as an institution as well. Any questions on verification before I move on to the different types of aid? I think is the next slide. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there are basically 4 types of financial aid. And the terminology is something that students and parents often get confused by. Financial aid is just a large umbrella that describes all the different aid that's available. Financial aid is grants, scholarships, which is free money. It's the federal work-study program, which is where money that you earn, and it is federal student loans that you ultimately have to pay back. Many times students will be awarded a financial aid package, maybe that only includes loans, and then parents and students come in and say, but what about my financial aid? It's like, well, the loans are part of financial aid. That is, in your case, all you are eligible for, unfortunately, if that's all you're eligible for. But yeah, those are the 4 parts of financial aid. So we're going to talk about the 3 parts that we like first: grants, scholarships, and the federal work-study program. So grants are a beautiful thing, because grants are obviously something that is free. It's not obvious, but grants are free and they don't have to be paid back. As I mentioned before, the only application you need to do to be eligible for most of these grants is the FAFSA form. In Florida, there is also a Florida state form as well that potentially can get you eligibility to a couple of other grants at some institutions. As I said, at SBC, we do it all based on the FAFSA form. So just filling out the FAFSA gets you potentially Pell eligibility, which is the large grant that most of you may have heard of. Also things like the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, First Generation Matching Grant, Student Incentive Grant. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different grants where you're potentially eligible for just by completing the FAFSA. Now, of all those grants I just mentioned, only one of them is fully funded. And by fully funded, I mean, if you fill out the FAFSA October the 1st, or if you fill out the FAFSA 3 weeks into the term, if you are Pell Grant eligible, you will get the Pell Grant. All of the other grants are nowhere near fully funded. And by that, I mean we get a lot more students eligible than we have funds available to award. So the only fair way we award all of the other grants, other than the Pell Grant, is we simply look at who's eligible, and then we go, who filled out the FAFSA for the 1st, who did it October the 1st, who did October the 2nd, and we move forward until we've exhausted those additional grants. So going back to my first slide where I said, when is the FAFSA available? Well, the 22-23 FAFSA, that's the one that you would want to fill out if you're planning on starting classes next summer. That's been available since October the 1st. Is it late now to be doing the FAFSA? It's not late. You're not going to be in the first group, but you may still get additional grants. But most important for most of you on this call is you are juniors in high school. Most of you are going to be potentially starting college fall next year, fall of 2023. So when that 23-24 FAFSA comes out, October the 1st of this year, do it that first day. So many students come into my office and they ask me, what's the last day I can do things? What's the deadline for this? What's the deadline for that? I shake my head as I look at them. Okay, why does everyone always want to know what's the last day they can do something? You want to do it the first day it's available, because it's going to increase the likelihood of you getting additional grants. So October the 1st is the magic date every year. Add it to your calendar. If you, as I say, if you're planning on starting summer next year, then one of your FAFSAs is available already. When you get off this call tonight, go and do it. Because at least that way you're not the last person to do it. So that's grants in a nutshell. Now, I spoke already about one type of professional judgment, and that was regarding that dependency override for students that aren't naturally considered independent completing the FAFSA, but maybe they're they don't have the ability to get the FAFSA filled out by their parents because of abuse or abandonment. There's another one I want to talk about as well, especially in the COVID world we're currently living in, because obviously, as I mentioned, when you do the 22-23 FAFSA, that's based on your income from 2020. When you do the 23-24 FAFSA, that's going to be based on your income from 2021. It's already 2022, and you're going to be going to college in 2023. So that 2020 income information and 2021 income information is going to be pretty historic information at that point. And maybe you or maybe your parents lost jobs because of COVID, or for some other reason, they may have lost jobs. So when you fill out the FAFSA, you do have to complete it based on the required tax year. But then if that's not a realistic representation of your current financial situation, you're going to want to reach out to the financial aid department at the school you're planning on attending and talk to them about doing a professional judgment. It's called a change in circumstance, where that college can, instead of looking at the base year, they can look at a different tax year to determine your eligibility, if it's going to give a more realistic representation of your current financial situation. Hopefully that made sense. Any questions on grants before I move on to the other part of free money, which is scholarships? Any questions? Nothing out there? I'll keep moving forward. I'm not sure of my time. Where am I at? Okay, I'm good. So scholarships, I'm only going to touch on very briefly, because I know we're going to talk more about scholarships later this evening. Really, all I want to talk about are SPC specific scholarships. So the link on our website is a great resource for checking out scholarships. We have a number of different scholarships on our website: Bright Futures, SPC Foundation, our institutional scholarships, and then some private donor ones and some generic search engines. The best bang for your buck if you're coming to SPC is SPC's foundation scholarships, just the same as I guarantee if you go to USF, they're going to have their own bunch of foundation scholarships, and they're going to be the best bang for your buck there. And the reason I say foundation scholarships are your best bang for your buck are because, one, the competition is limited. Only students attending that institution will be able to apply. And two, typically it's one application that's going to apply for a multitude of different scholarships. At SPC, for instance, our foundation scholarship application, it's open right now for fall of this year. I know that's too early for you guys, but it's open right now for fall of this year. But it's one application that applies for between 300 to 500 different scholarships, and it doesn't take a long time to do. So that's why I'd always recommend to students apply for as many scholarships as you can, because you can stack these things. And when I say stack these things, coming to SPC, if you're a full-time student being charged in-state tuition, total cost for one semester, 12 credits, including books, you're looking at about $2,000 a semester. The maximum amount of aid a student can get for one semester is $10,000. So you can get a lot more money than you need just to cover the cost of tuition, books, and fees. Now, once you've got those tuition, books, and fees covered, that extra money is coming to you. Am I encouraging you to get this extra money so that you can go out and buy every new Apple device that they release? And don't think it's any surprise that Apple releases all their new products at the same time as every college and university across America is giving these refund checks to students. They're a smart company. No, the reason I'm encouraging you to get this extra scholarship money is because if you do start at SPC and you do your first 2 years at SPC, we're very reasonably priced. Save that extra money so that ultimately when you go on to the 4-year university and you're living away from home potentially, because that's where the expenses are, it's those dorms and those food plans. That's where you want that extra money saved. So save as much as you can during your early associate degree or even your entire undergraduate degree, so that ultimately when you go on to the big 4 university, whether that's to get your bachelor's or to get your master's degree, you've got some additional funds saved. Because certainly when you get to the master's level, there really aren't many grants at all and scholarship. I mean, there's no grants and very few scholarships at the master's level. So you're really going to want to save as much as you can during the undergraduate level when there are a lot of grants and scholarships available that you can save to then utilize later down the road. That's all I'm going to talk on scholarships because I don't want to steal any more thunder from later in the presentation. Couple of other things I want to talk about very briefly. The Federal Work-Study Program. It's a great program. Basically what it is students can work whilst they're in college. And these are jobs typically on campus. So a great program for a number of different reasons. One, you're learning skills that you can really use to bolster your resume at the end of the day. You're not just working in retail or working in fast food or a restaurant. You're typically going to work in a field that's going to tie somehow into your ultimate career. So when you do graduate, you don't only have the qualification, but you have some work experience in that area. So that's one of the big pluses I have for the work-study program. Secondly, students that are working for me, I know fully well when their finals are, when their midterms are. So if they tell me, hey, Will, is it okay if I don't, cut back on my hours this week because I've got a final? I understand. I also understand every semester their class schedule is going to change. So they're going to be coming to me to want to change their work schedule. Well, all supervisors in the Federal Work Study Program are fully aware of this. So they're going to be working with the students. So just a lot of positives about the work study programs that just ties in very well whilst you're in college. The last thing I'm going to talk about very briefly are federal student loans, because I really encourage students to try to get as much as they can through grants, scholarships, and the Federal Work Study Program. The average student loan debt in America right now for students graduating with a bachelor's degree is slowly creeping towards the $40,000 mark. And that's the average. I mean, there's over 1 million people with $100,000 in federal student loan debt. And we can all hope that Biden is going to do loan forgiveness coming up, but I don't know whether that's going to pass. I know many of us hope that it's going to pass. But don't rely on the hope that maybe they'll do some type of loan forgiveness down the road. I highly encourage you to not borrow at all if possible, or if you do borrow, definitely limit what you borrow, only what you really need. The big mistake that a lot of students make is at the beginning of the year, we offer a student a financial aid package, which is going to be a combination potentially of grants, scholarships, and loans. Some students don't look at it and they just say accept all, not realizing that some of it is loans. Remember, a part of financial aid is loans. Loans have to be paid back. There are basically 3 types of loans: subsidized, unsubsidized, which are loans that a student will take out, and there's a plus loan that would be a loan in a parent's name. The only difference between the 2 student loans, the subsidized and unsubsidized, is to do with the accrual of interest. A subsidized loan is not accruing interest whilst you're in college. An unsubsidized loan is accruing interest. So if you do choose to take a loan, then try to limit it to only taking subsidized loans if possible. The interest rate for the sub and unsub loan is the same. It's 3.73% this year. Chances are it's going to be going up next year and then up again by the time you're in college, because interest rates definitely are heading up as we try to control inflation. Plus loans do have a higher interest rate. I believe plus loans right now are almost 6%. I'd have to check that. We don't get many students taking plus loans at SBC because the grants and scholarships cover most. And for those that need the loans sub and unsub, it's more than enough to cover at SBC. Bottom line, and a common question we get when it comes to loans, I'll have students come in my office and say, well, I didn't graduate, so do I need to pay my loans back? Unfortunately, yes. We don't want you not to graduate. We want what you start for you to finish. But just because you don't finish a degree doesn't mean you don't have to pay back the loans you took up to the point when you drop out. Not that we want you to do that. We want you to graduate. We want you to change your life for the better, not for the worse. If you do take loans, this is how old you're going to be by the time you pay them off, with most of the repayment plans that are currently available and the amount of loans that people get into if you're not careful. So again, grants, scholarships, federal work study, the free side of financial aid. Take advantage of it. There is so much free money left on the table every year. Any other questions or any questions? Making my life easy this evening.
It seems like there may be a question coming up.
Okay. Coming up with that, I will put in chat my direct email address and not cell phone, my telephone number.
So question that is on the chat is, do you know of any trustworthy scholarship websites that aren't specific to USF and SBC? Yes, I will be answering that pretty shortly.
Excellent. Thank you for answering that one.
Okay, and Will has just added his contact information. So if you can stop sharing, I'll start sharing and we can get into scholarship information. So as a reminder, my name is Danica Walker. I am a past counselor and we will be talking about scholarships. So there are a lot of scholarship opportunities that are out there. As you kind of seen, SBC and USF and all of the universities and colleges that you may be interested in attending will have their own scholarships that are specific to their institution. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But before we get into those types of scholarships, there are scholarships that are available to students no matter what schools they may decide to go to. And so the best place to start is usually locally. Pinellas County Schools has a really great website that one of the professionals at Pinellas County Schools takes the time to accumulate all the websites and all the scholarships that she's aware of, and she'll compile them into one specific list. And the cool thing about this is that this scholarship website is not just geared towards seniors, but you can find scholarships that are available for students as early as 9th grade. So I'm going to do a quick click and let's see if it comes up. And so it's right here, it says scholarship opportunities, and it was just updated about 5 days ago. So when you click on it, it's a PDF document. And so if you go down, it'll tell you when the scholarships are due, if it's a one-time scholarship, any requirements that they may have, as well as what grade you need to be in to be eligible for the scholarship. So you see there are a few that are currently available for 11th grade students. And then there are some that are available for 9th grade students and 10th grade students. So we highly recommend that you usually start here because they've been vetted, so you don't really have to worry about them being scams or anything like that. And then outside of Pinellas County Schools, another great place to look is the Pinellas Education Foundation scholarships. So for the students who are graduating this year, that scholarship opened in September of 2021. So for 11th grade students, I would highly recommend that around mid-September, you start looking out for Pinellas Education scholarships. So we're going to click on that as well. And the cool thing about Pinellas Education scholarships is that it's not just one scholarship opportunity, but you complete, let's find it. You complete one application to be considered for several different types of scholarships. I think there are over 100 scholarships that are available to you. Yep, there are nearly 100 scholarships. And while it may be too early for you to apply right now, you can go through and you can see a little bit more about the types of scholarships that are available and what the criteria may be. So they provide you with a really cool catalog of all the ones that you may be considered for. And it ranges from the type of major that you might be interested in, the high school that you attend, the college that you may go to, your GPA, all those different types of things. So it provides a variety of scholarship opportunities, and it's not just geared towards one specific type of student. Okay, so outside of Pinellas Education Foundation and the website that Pinellas County Schools puts together, a few other opportunities that you may want to look at or consider are going through the Florida Student Financial Aid website. So usually, and this will be another slide, most students go on here because of Bright Futures. That's one of the biggest scholarships in the state of Florida. But as you see, there are several other scholarships that students may be eligible for. So it could be effective access to student education, first generation matching grant, Florida Farm Worker Student Scholarship. So it doesn't hurt to go and look at these scholarships, look at the requirements, and then see if you are eligible for any of those and apply for them as well. And then Bright Futures. So the Bright Futures application opens on October 1st. The application is required and it is for all 4 of the Bright Futures categories. So for Florida Academic Scholars, Florida Medallion Scholars, Gold Seal Vocational Scholars, and then the Gold Skill CAPE Scholars. So the second 2 are for students who are interested in going into vocational education and not necessarily going into a 4-year university. And so you do have to complete the required high school coursework. You do have to achieve the minimum GPA they're looking for at each level. And then there are minimum SAT and ACT requirements as well. And for might be all of them, but I know specifically for the top two, you do have to complete a certain number of service hours that have to be approved by your guidance counselor. So they usually want you to talk them through what your intended plan is in advance of you doing the work. And then there's a form that you'll have to have your wherever you're volunteering at complete to show that you've completed those hours. And so, oh wait, let's see if it'll work. Maybe not, but okay, that's okay. So if you have any questions about the Bright Future Scholarship, they do a really good job of providing pretty in-depth information about what the requirements are, the length of the scholarship, the award amounts, and all that stuff. So if you ever have anything that you want to know about, they have the handbook, which outlines all the things. So for example, currently the Florida Academic Scholars, you have to have a 3.5 GPA, and then for the 2022-2023 graduates, you need to have at least a 29 on the ACT and a 1330 on the SAT. But if you're going after the Florida Medallion Scholarship, then that is a 3.0, a 25 on the ACT, and a 1210 on the SAT. And then if you're wanting to know more about the other two scholarships, they have that information as well. And then outside of those scholarships that, are pretty well known and well documented, another thing that you can do is do some research about who you're connected to and what they may have access to. So for example, talk to family members, talk to friends, talk to neighbors, because a lot of times there are employer-related scholarships. So if you are a parent who works at a company, does your company offer scholarships to students who are children of employees? Also, churches, synagogues, and temples may offer scholarships, and then clubs and community organizations can also offer scholarships as well. And a really great place to look is banks, and if you are part of a credit union, they tend to offer scholarships for seniors who either are a member of that bank or the credit union, or who are the children of members of the bank or credit union. So do some digging, do some searching. It's pretty easy to just identify what are the communities, what are the companies that you're connected to or tied to, and then doing a quick Google search to see if there are any scholarships that are available through that method. And then expanding your search. So those are the local scholarships, specifically starting with Pinellas County Schools, Pinellas Education Foundation, and then Florida scholarships, and checking out who you're connected to. But outside of that, there are about 2 other scholarships that we highly recommend that students consider checking into and ideally applying for. So the first one is a scholarship offered through College Board. College Board is the company that creates the SAT. I know they went through a name change, but I'm pretty sure it's still called the Opportunity Scholarships. And what's really cool about it is that it is open to all students, regardless of their GPA, test scores, or family income. So you can start applying for scholarships through the Opportunity Scholarships as early as your 11th grade year, which you all are in now. And why we highly recommend it is because not only does it make you eligible for scholarship money, which is really important, let's be real, but the other part of it is that there are about 6 scholarships that you become eligible for as you go through this pipeline. And what it does is it helps you to simplify the college admissions process. So you're rewarded for taking actions and doing the things necessary to apply to college. There is no application fee, or not application fee, but there's no essay. There's no application that you have to complete. It's just doing the steps. And like I said, it's open for class of 2022, but also class of 2023. And so this is what it looks like. So if you type in opportunity.collegeboard.org, it will bring you here. And what you do to get the scholarships is first you'll build your college list. So you'll sit down, you'll think about what are the colleges that you're interested in attending, and you'll just make a list of those schools. That puts you in the running for $500. And then you'll practice for the SAT. That puts you in the running for another $500. Exploring scholarships, which is what we're talking about, potentially gets you another $500. And then that college list that you created in the first step, they want you to go back and they want you to strengthen it. And strengthening it means just considering, okay, what are the schools I actually want to attend versus schools that sound cool, but I don't really want to go there, and just narrowing down to get to the place that is ultimately the best school for you. Completing the FAFSA puts you in the running for $500, so doing exactly what Will asked. And then applying for college puts you in the running for another $500. And if you complete all 6 of these steps, it puts you in the running for a scholarship that is the amount of $40,000, and they give out 6 of these scholarships each year. And the last scholarship that we also really recommend is Raise.me. Raise.me is a pretty unique way of scholarship application and scholarship search. And that is because it is asking you to create a personal portfolio. And that personal portfolio gets you access to micro scholarships. So micro scholarships, kind of similar to like the opportunity scholarships, may not be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, but they're small amounts of maybe you do what Kason suggests and you go on a college tour. Well, if you go on a college tour to USF, hypothetically, and they're offering you $200 for that college tour, and then let's say you did 2 AP classes and they're offering $100 for each AP class that you got a 4 or above on your AP exam. And you were in a club or organization and they offer $500 for that. Or there's a lot of different options. So it could be that you had extracurricular activities, you had a job while you were in school, and each of these different things that you just already done because it was important to you or it was just a part of the process of being a college or a high school student gets you money that you can add towards your scholarships. So the caveats to Raise.me is that the schools that you're interested in, or I guess let me reverse that. Raise.me partners with specific schools. So not every university in the state of Florida, but also in the country may not be on Raise.me. So you have to just kind of go through and see what schools are. And the second part of it is that the money is guaranteed as long as you are accepted to that school. So you could go through and you may have like a bucket for, let's say, Virginia Commonwealth University, but you don't get accepted. So that money is not guaranteed to you. But if you do go to USF and you are accepted and you do have a pot of money and Raise.me, they are obligated to give you that money. It's their contract. And I've come across a student who has had that situation where they got accepted and they were like, hey, I have this money, and USF was like, okay, well, that's what we promised you, and so that's what you're eligible for. So what you do is you go in and you create a profile for yourself. And then you kind of just start clicking and seeing what's available and seeing the ways that you can earn scholarships. So the examples that they give are getting an A, and then this school would offer $1,000. And then if you have a leadership role on a sports team, you can also get $1,500. And so again, while this seems like small bits of money, ultimately it does start to accumulate into a lot more. Before I get into this slide, in addition to those things, and once we get back to specific institutions, Kason did a really great job of showing you the freshman scholarships that are available at USF when he said that, once you apply, you're automatically considered for these scholarships. What a lot of students don't know is that in addition to those freshman scholarships that you see on the admissions website, most, if not all, colleges and universities have foundation scholarships. And they kind of operate very similar to the Pinellas Education Foundation, which is that you may only have to complete one application, but the application could put you in running for multiple scholarships, or there are scholarships that are for a large variety of students. So it may not be tied to your GPA or your test scores, but it could be tied to the major that you intend to go into, or it could be tied to the high school that you went to, and other things like that. So we always recommend that as you do narrow down the schools that you plan to attend or are thinking about attending, look on their website and see what are their foundation scholarships, because those are usually a separate application and it's not your admissions application. But once you kind of have an idea of, the schools that you're going to and then the places that you can apply for scholarships, highly recommend that you stay organized. So determine what your scholarship email address is going to be and make sure that you check it regularly. That's the email address you're going to always use for all your scholarship applications. And then set up a regular schedule to search and review for scholarships. Every time you come across a new scholarship, make sure that not only are you writing it down, but that you're going back to check if it's not open yet, or when it is open, making sure that you're completing in a timely manner and not just waiting to the deadline. Keep your scholarship list, just like I mentioned. It could be in Excel. If you do put in Excel or in a document, write down the scholarship, write down the requirements that the scholarship may have. So if you need reference letters, if they require your transcripts, if they're requiring an essay, know all that up front so that you can start to gather those things. Normally when you're needing essays or you're going to need to have that reviewed. If you're going to ask for a reference or recommendation from a teacher, having them get it in a timely manner so they can get you the best recommendation letters that they possibly can is very helpful. And then just keep a folder. So keep track of the essays that you've already written. It does not hurt that if 2 different scholarships are asking for similar similar essays that you know, maybe revamp it a little bit and then submit it. You don't have to write a new essay for every single scholarship that you come across, especially if the topic is the same thing. Can keep track of completed applications. And then we also recommend that when you are asking for teachers and guidance counselors or whoever to complete a recommendation or a reference for you, that you provide them with a brag sheet. So I've been asked to write a lot of letters of recommendations, and usually I only know students in a specific manner. So I used to be like an out of school guidance counselor, which means I help run an after school program. So I didn't see them in class. I didn't see them in sports. I didn't necessarily see them outside of the way that I was introduced to them. And I can speak a lot about that, but it didn't give them a well-rounded application. And so when a student could provide me with, hey, Ms. Danica, you know, not only am I in this program, but I also do basketball, or I'm in football, or I play an instrument, or whatever these other things that I do outside of just being in your program or just being in your class, it helps to provide that scholarship opportunity, or that, you know, those readers with a really clear idea of, this is a great student. This is a well-rounded student. Not only are they in all these programs, but they also have A's and B's, or they also do these other things. And so it ties it all together very neatly for you. So provide them with a brag sheet if you can. Just write out, you know, the different extracurricular activities that you're a part of, any major accomplishments, if you got any awards while you're in high school, any volunteer opportunities that you do. Those types of things tend to bode really well on your recommendation letters. And then once you have accepted any scholarships or have been given any scholarships, confirm all the details, read the fine print, find out if it's a one-time scholarship or if it's renewable. If it's renewable, make sure you understand what are the requirements to have that scholarship renewed, make note of the award, and then always send a thank you letter. It's not required, but it's a very nice gesture, and you're all set. Usually after that, that scholarship company or organization will send a letter to the school that you're going to, and then they'll work to either give you the money directly in the form of a check or send the money to the school. And then it goes through people like Will, and it shows up on, sometimes it shows up through your like required things of like, they'll take that off first and then they'll send you whatever's left. But it all depends on the scholarship. Okay, so that was a lot of information about scholarships and loans and grants and federal work study. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff? Okay. Well, I'm going to go into the last thing just so that we are good on time. But if you do have any questions, you can still put them in the chat and we can answer them once I'm finished with my last PowerPoint. Okay, so to wrap all this up, let me make sure I can. Like I've mentioned throughout, I am a Pinellas Access to Higher Education counselor through the University of South Florida St. Petersburg campus. And we do a lot of workshops similar to this one because the mission of the PATH program is to make sure that we are providing flexible, equitable, and attainable pathways for high school students in Pinellas County, because our overall goal is to make sure that we are increasing the number of students who are going into the workforce who have skills that can fill skill gaps and that are able to have economic mobility as they, you know, go throughout high school, complete high school, and then go into their career. You want to make sure that, you know, you understand what's available to you and that you're able to meet the needs that you may have financially later in life. And so we do that by making sure that students understand what life looks like after high school and all their opportunities and options. And so even though I work for the University of South Florida, I am not here to promote the university over any other institution. And a lot of the information that was provided is pretty comparable to other schools that you may be interested in. So don't feel that you have to, you know, reach out to us only if you want to go to either the institutions that we talked about today. But if you have any other questions about other schools, we're also able to be a resource for that as well. And so a little bit about PATH. So like I said, we're a resource. We want to make sure that we're providing college access information regardless of intended college, like I said, and we take some time to volunteer throughout Pinellas County schools. So you may have seen me in a college and career center. We go into high school classrooms, and then we do these virtual workshops. We also assist students who are interested in transferring into USF. So we provide them with resources, we connect them to important information, and then we also offer them transfer assistance once they're ready to transfer. And what that looks like is, oh, actually, I skipped some stuff, but that's okay. But specifically some tips for right now. The college application process is going to be starting soon as a high school junior. I know it seems like it still may be a while away, but a lot of the colleges that you may be interested in, their college applications will be opening this summer. And so like Hasten said, it's in your best interest to apply early and not wait until, maybe the semester starts or you get closer to January or December, because there will be students who've already started to apply and the pool of students that you're being compared against may change. So with that being said, there are some things that we highly recommend that you do. If you have not already, start considering the type of major in the career that interests you. This will help you determine which type of school you want to go to. Like Faith mentioned earlier, there are different types of certificates and degrees that you may get. So if you're trying to be a welder, you don't need to go to USF. If you want to be a vet tech, you might not need a tech certificate, but you may need a bachelor or an associate's degree. But if you want to be an engineer, you're going to need a bachelor's degree. So understanding where you want to go helps you determine what type of school you want to go to. And once you understand what type of school you want to go to, it's important then to make a list, kind of like the scholarship I mentioned, so that you can narrow down which schools are the schools that fit those needs. And when you're making that list, it helps to have a list of different characteristics that you are going to compare these schools to. So if you know that you're going to go to a four-year institution, are you staying in the state of Florida, or are you going to go to another state or be an out-of-state student? If that's the case, what is the environment that you want to be in? Are you someone who wants to be in a large school like USF Tampa campus, where there's, maybe 40,000 students? Do you want to be in a mid-sized school? Do you want to be in a small school? Side of the school size, are you someone who wants to be in a large city? Do you want to be in a smaller town? Do you want to be in a rural area? Are you going to live on campus or are you going to live off campus? All those different types of things help you to determine, is this school the best school for me or is it not? And for each student, it's very unique and very individual, because what may have worked for older sibling, parent, cousin, friends may not be the best school environment for you. And so as you make that list, be aware of the application deadlines, be aware of the application materials, very similar to the scholarship conversation we just had. So know when you're going to need a letter of recommendation from a teacher, know which schools are just going to look at grades and test scores, know which schools are going to ask you to provide a high school resume. And then also create that brag sheet. So write down all the extracurricular activities that you've done. Write down any accomplishments, any jobs that you've held, any volunteer opportunities that you've done. You can even write down all the classes that you've taken and the grades that you got. It may seem like very unnecessary and redundant, but you'd be surprised at the questions that scholarships may ask you, especially the ones that are national scholarships that provide a lot of money, because they want to know, how do you compare to all these other different students from across the country that are asking for that same scholarship. And when you have it in front of you, it's a lot easier to write it down than trying to remember, when it's being asked, like, okay, well, what class did you take in ninth grade? I don't know. So take some time to do that in advance. And then utilize your resources. So if you do go to a Pinellas County school, there are, I want to say there are about 9 college and career centers that are open right now. I know that they are planning to expand, but if you are at one of the schools that already have a college and career center, utilize them. They can sit down and help you complete applications. They can help you with FAFSA. They can help you with, reading an essay that you may have. If you want to talk to somebody else about your essays, an English teacher is a great person to do that, because they know the grammar, they know the punctuation, they know what schools are going to be looking for and what they're going to say, that wasn't it. And then if you have not done this either, make sure that you take your SAT and ACT tests. If you've already taken it and you don't feel that you're up to par or you want to get a higher score, you can retake. Some great resources for retaking and getting practice is Khan Academy. You can link your PSAT or SAT scores to your Khan Academy account, and they will give you guided practice questions based on what you need help with, which is really cool. And then the ACT also offers free test prep. If you type in like free ACT, it takes you to their website and they have resources as well. YouTube channel panels will show you a little bit of information about how do you answer the types of questions. They may go in depth and a little bit into the actual like content of like, okay, this is the information that you needed to learn. But sometimes it's not even the content, it's just understanding what is the question asking you and being able to determine, okay, of these 5 questions, which ones don't make sense. And if I know that these 4 questions don't even answer, don't give the answer to the question I have, then I know that I don't have to do the math problem. I can just eliminate them and I know the right answer. So sometimes it could be just as simple as understanding what is the test and how the test is created. And make sure that you apply. So there are a few different ways that you can apply for colleges. The first way is a direct application. So that means that you're going to the school's website, you're clicking on apply now, and you're putting in your application information that way. Another way is the Common App. The Common App is an application that allows students to apply to over 900 colleges across the country. And then there's also the Coalition App, which allows students to apply to over 150. You can do a combination of all 3. So maybe you apply directly to some schools who may not be on the Common App and the Coalition App, or you can use the Common App if all of your schools are located on there, or Common App and Coalition App. So just understand that they are available. They do simplify the application process if your schools are on there, and that could be another way that you are able to apply as well. And that is pretty much it. So I don't know why my picture doesn't show, but that's okay. This is what I look like. There is myself, Danica Walker. I'm PATH counselor. And then we also have Xavier Ramos, who is the assistant director of the PATH program. You can stay in contact with us by going to our website, which outlines a little bit more about who we are and what we do. We have a Facebook page, and then we also have an Instagram page. We ask that if you can, follow us on either of them. We try to stay up to date with scholarship information, providing cool tips and tricks for high school students and things of the like. And then we are also going to be having Discover Your Path this summer, so be on the lookout for that. And that is it. Exit and stop sharing. So, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Well, if there aren't any questions, we do ask that you complete our survey. It lets us know how we did. And I can also put that in the chat as well. So I'm going to leave this up for a few seconds. And then I'll share it in the chat. But I do want to thank you all for taking some time out of your evening. I know that, middle of the week from 6 to 8 can be a long time to be on a computer. But I will make sure that we share this recording with you all so that you can go back and review some of the things, because like Monica said, it is a lot to digest. I'll also share some links with you, so like the Pinellas Education Foundation Scholarship and all the different scholarships that I mentioned. And if you have any questions for any of us, our contact information is in the chat, and then I'll also make sure that it is emailed to you all as well.
Thank you, Danica.
Thank you, Faith. Okay, but other than that, I hope you have a great evening. I look forward to working with you all in the future.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye, Faith.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Will.